Greetings, travelers.
Greetings, travelers. It's Mark and Erika, and we are in the amazing month of
Jinky's
July.
Jinky's July. I was waiting. I jumped in. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
That's okay.
Your
It's been a
thunder.
long time since I did a sing song. I thought I'd throw one in here because it's been a bit.
Yeah.
But we are going to be at a couple of events. So we're going to be at Smoky Mountain Bigfoot on July 27th. And then we're going to be at Squonkapalooza with Cryptids of the Corn. I love that. On August 10th and 11th. So I'm super excited for that coming up.
Carrie was geeking out since we had Justin on, and she's like, you have to get him back on immediately because she just wants to talk biology with him for an hour. So about little monsters and hellbenders and salamanders.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, that was amazing. I learned so much stuff on this, but something came up for one of our travelers. We sort of witnessed it happen. And I just want to bring it up as a point is one of our travelers sent us a story, which we'll be sharing. But when they posted their experience in a couple groups, they kind of got immediately attacked.
Yeah.
And I just want to reiterate, we're not going to say names or anything, but listen, everybody has their own reality and their own perception. And part of the reason a lot of this stuff is not talked about or discovered or things like that is because of that weird propensity. I'm going to use the big word of the day.
This person was in a tourist area. We had just visited it. We had made a social media post about it. And then this person saw something unusual. And it'll be on an upcoming Listener Tales episode where we go into detail on it. But they reached out to us because they were like, hey, well, you were just there. Do you know about this? And I was like, I have heard that, but we didn't experience it while we were there. You know, please make sure you document it, post it in, a couple places. And I listed a few places to post it. They were like, well, what about like the local tourist, message board on Facebook? And I was like, yeah, that's a great place. See if anybody else witnessed it. And thankfully they posted anonymously, but they got hammered with people just making fun of them. And I felt terrible. And so I jumped in a little bit just to say, hey, look, I've got reports from that area. There are things happen in that area. Oh man. And then it blew up. So travelers, everybody out there, look, you may not believe in all this stuff that we talk about. I understand some people are Bigfoot people. Some people are UFO people. Some people are ghost people. Sometimes they don't mix. We like to take everything as it comes, right?
Well, and the truth here is that we don't know. It's preternatural. You don't know person who says it doesn't exist either. That's not how this works. So guess what? Be nice, regardless of whether you agree. Yes. If they're not hurting somebody else and you don't have a comment, you could go, oh, I never saw that there, or I'm not sure that's a thing. That's fine. But we don't need to do that to each other in today's society.
You can scroll past things you don't agree with. It's a thing. You can change the channel if you don't like it. You don't have to listen to our podcast if you don't like what we're talking about. None of that. We live in a free society. You don't have to do this, right?
Exactly. And the worst thing you can do is berate any other human being for their views. It's just simply not okay. Right. So I wanted to just mention that because we're going to go into a very cool topic today. But, travelers out there, I'm sorry if you ever encounter somebody giving you that rash of crap. But the fact is that it's not how normal humans should behave. And I'm done with my tirade on this. And we love our travelers. And Mark, what are we talking about today?
Hold on. One last thing on that I do want to say as well is that, look, that is why we call it preternatural stuff we don't understand yet. This is stuff you would have been made a fool of years ago if you told anybody, hey, I'm going to have a phone in a few years that can take photos, watch TV, chat with people around the world, and not have to pay long distance calls. But guess what? We all have that now. That's just it. It's stuff we don't understand yet. It's stuff that comes to us, and eventually we do. But this is exactly why we don't understand this stuff, is because somebody makes a post, says, hey, I saw something weird. I don't understand it. Can anybody else say they saw it? Another person saw it with me. I made a post about it. And now I've got nothing but a million people saying I'm goofy and I was drinking moonshine. And it's like, no. whatever. It's just that. All right, I'm getting off my soapbox because hey, you're listening to our show. You should be of similar mindset to us. So
yeah, and it also means you're really cool. So
yeah, you're a good
we're
crowd.
gonna go with that.
All right, so now we are gonna go. Okay, so we've talked cryptids galore, right?
Yes.
We know Scotland has the Loch Ness monster, right? Sasquatch all over, right? And then we haven't really talked about Chupacabra or the Yeti, but they're there, right? We know these monsters; they're infamous.
Yeah.
This guy is a little less famous.
Oh.
And you know me, I love my less famous ones, my holler monsters, right?
Yes.
Now, we're going to Squonkapalooza in a little bit. And I was sad to say we missed an event recently that we had other events booked, so we couldn't go to this one, but it's one of our favorites, and it is in the town of Bishopville, South Carolina.
What is in the town of Bishopville, South Carolina, Mark?
All right. They have a lot of swamps around that area. And most famous one of all is the Scape Swamp. And the Scape Swamp has a creature that apparently likes to eat the chrome trim on automobiles.
What?
We'll get into that in a little bit.
What?
All right. So this is the Lizard Man of Scape Swamp. We have to jump in the Wayback Machine right off the bat.
I wish you'd warned me. It doesn't have nearly the snacks it had before because we know our lovely friends. But okay, what are we doing here?
Well, I do have some blueberry lemonade, so we're good.
Oh, good.
All right. And I did make some blackberry dumplings recently because it's blackberry season.
What? Blackberry dumplings? How come you didn't tell me about this?
Because you're gluten-free right now. I can't give them to you. So
okay, you need to work on your gluten-free blackberry. Okay, doesn't matter. Wayback Machine. Let's go.
All right. So in the Wayback Machine. All right. So we're going back to June 29th, 1988.
Ooh.
Not too far back. Where were you in June 29th, 1988, Erika? We don't want to step on our timelines here.
Oh, no, we don't. I was in Florida. I think we're safe.
Okay. I was a junior in high school in 1988. So.
Oh, well, now you're just showing off, Mark. So that's fine.
All right.
Okay.
So anyway,
I do have my parachute pants on for this Wayback Machine, though.
I got my Dickies. I think that was big at that time for some reason. I don't remember. So
this is true. This is true.
All right. So this young boy is driving home from his job, and he blows a tire on the edge of Scape Swamp. So he pulls into a friend's house, right? That he knows nearby. That's one version of the story. Another version of the story is that he just pulls into a house. But the kid's name is Christopher Davis. All right.
Okay, Christopher Davis.
Years
is
old.
He wearing parachute pants? Do we think? Probably not.
I don't know. He's 17, so he's about the same age as me at this time. So.
Wow.
Now this becomes just amazing piece of folklore here, right? So what happens with you is he gets out there, he stops at the house of his friend, and he starts changing the tire.
Okay.
Right next to the swamp. And while he's changing the tire, he's just kind of looking out in the swamp because he hears a noise.
Okay.
He notices the creature kind of emerging from the swamp.
Ooh.
And he just immediately gets that sense of panic.
As one does.
Yes. And it just charges at him. And he says it is just bright red eyes and green covered in scales and looks like an alligator man.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's what he called it, an alligator man. It jumps at him. He gets into his car and it scratches into his car and like latches onto it. He peels out, right? And he manages to dislodge the creature by driving erratically and braking. And it just gets him enough time to get away.
Okay.
What do you do if you're that kid after you've gotten away? What would you do?
I would. Oh, I feel like I'm going to answer this wrong. I would think I would want to tell somebody about it, but I'm also knee deep in horror movies at this point in time, so I need to go find my best friend. That's what I need to do.
Well, he went home And his parents convinced him to call the cops.
Well, that's not horrible, right?
Right? Yeah. So he calls the sheriff's department, lodges a
Okay.
report. Now, that's what causes a media storm. Everybody kind of becomes interested in this. So what happens is because this comes out, more reports start coming forward of other people who had seen it over the decades. We had this happen with Grafton Monster. We had this happen with other monsters that one person does the report. Oh, there are other stories. Remember even Loveland, where the one guy, the police officer makes his report, then it harkens back to that old 1950s legend.
Well, and that kind of ties into what we were talking about to begin with, is people not talking about it because they don't want people to think they're crazy.
But now it's in the news. Also, what happens, the same thing that happens with Grafton, everybody in the world decides to descend on Bishopville. Every person with a shotgun is going to go bag themselves an alligator man. So the town is flooded with monster hunters. And the media coverage is still keeping it alive. Now, a big report comes in August 5th, a little while later.
Okay.
And this is on Shaw Air Force Base. An airman who's out there, his name's Kenneth Orr. He is out on Highway 15, and he says the creature jumped out at him, and he even shoots and wounds it.
Oh.
And he has some scales and some blood as evidence.
Oh my gosh.
He submits that. Now, the main thing is, Orr was unlawfully carrying a pistol.
Not good.
And so he admitted that he had hoaxed that.
Okay. Well, that makes me sad, and yet it makes sense.
So he got his charges reduced to misdemeanor for having the illegal gun and for filing a false police report. So of course that means everyone says, see, it's all a hoax. I
hate it when people do stuff like that, because it does interrupt the legitimacy of things that are legitimate.
Yep, exactly, right? It keeps it down, right? It keeps it everything. So our good buddy Lyle Blackburn, right?
Yes.
We've met him at a couple festivals. He's met him at Mothman. We've met him at a few. I just was talking with him recently at Small Town Monsters. He published a book on the Lizard Man in 2013.
Okay.
We'll put the links to that in the show, the show notes here. Now he's convinced that all these concentrated sightings here in 1988 were when it was like emerging from like a stupor. It was like it had woken up. And so that's why it's attacking so many things and attacking so many cars around this time. It attacks a few more cars. There are police reports of claw marks ripping through cars.
Wow. Now, okay. I have an immediate thought. I'm just going to throw that out there, which is, we talk a little bit in touches on some of the experiments that have been done in the past to merge DNA together, and there's quite a bit of that. So this is a walking, talking lizard.
Yes.
How tall is it supposed to be?
About 7 foot tall.
Wow.
So alligators do get that big. There are alligators in South Carolina. There are alligators in those swamps. They don't tend to stand on two legs and come charging at you. But we have seen alligators do that, where they raise up and then slam back down, as it's some alligator habit. I've seen them do that in the wild.
Well, and then we've seen them run up trees and fences and stuff like that. So it's not unheard of, right?
Right, exactly. And there was a festival a few years ago. They did the Lizard Man Festival and Comic Con, and it was put on by our good friend Dr. John Stamey, and he hosted it. And he admitted it was just to kind of build tourism again, right? This was in 2000. Oh gosh, when was that? That was like 2018. And what was fun was in 2017, there was the eclipse was coming over South Carolina. Okay. The police department in that area sent out a warning saying, beware of the eclipse. We don't know what it will do to the lizard man in this area. That went out on your little text warnings that you get for like hurricanes and things like that.
That they don't know what the lizard man's gonna do, what it's gonna do to the lizard man.
Right.
What did they think it was gonna do to the lizard man?
Well, they weren't sure. I mean, it's gonna be suddenly dark out and 20 degrees cooler. That might, cause the lizard man to be affected. It's such a silly thing.
I guess that's so. I'm just gonna say that in sheer brilliance here, I love that there was a warning about what may or may not happen to this lizard man.
Yeah. When we went out there, right, to Bishopville to write what was Eerie, Appalachia, because it's not really the Appalachians, it's a little further out, but I was stretching because I really like lizard man. I want to put him in the book. And we went to this artisanal well that's like out in the swamp. And that was supposedly where a lot of the sightings were.
Okay.
And you kind of had to jump a guardrail to get to it. Now, this is where supposedly a local cyclist had seen it. They had stopped to get some water out. And that's when it came up from the swamp.
Okay.
And there's this one doctor, Dr. Joseph Laycock.
Okay.
He was one who came to the festival. He was a big Mothman fan, but he's the one who really loves Lizard Man. Okay. And he's like, so his quote was, amongst cryptids, we don't have a lot of stories with scales. It's always some variation of Bigfoot, something big and shaggy. Look at Mothman. Mothman's big and shaggy. With this, I can't help but thinking of media, like the creature from the Black Lagoon. It has some sort of sci-fi element that a lot of other cryptids don't have. And I think that's what makes it unique. This was from an article with the South Carolina Public Radio. He was a religious studies expert. And he's like, so in religious studies, things like cryptozoology and folklore are kind of like the black sheep, because we want to show our work is very serious and very political and very kind of white collar. But actually, I think these things are really important to a lot of ordinary folk, because I think they deserve more attention and less scorn and less ridicule. How cool is that, right?
That is very cool.
So
this has ended up being a theme unintentionally of the show today.
Right, exactly. I didn't even mean that to happen, but it just kind of happened. There was there was a 2015. There was a famous photo of the lizard man that appeared, and he's jacked. He looks like some muscle-bound dude walking in a suit, like he's walking to work. He looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger in a lizard costume.
Oh my God.
This even got to the whole point where Stephen Colbert had to do a little bit about him. That just shows you how big that was in 2015. But a lot of people say, oh, well, what about the cars? What about this? What about that? All the evidence was taken by the police department. It is all still there. It is still considered an open investigation.
Really?
Even despite it being a hoax. It was all a hoax. And this is all in Lee County, South Carolina. So
are you able to see these items or no?
You can with a Freedom of Information Act request, or if you just, ask around. There is a Lizard Man mini museum. I'm not sure it's still open because it was in the old Button Man Museum, and the Button Man Museum is closed.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. Button Man is a whole other story. That's a
Button Man?
He's not a cryptid. He's a guy who collected buttons, and he was on Johnny Carson. He was on a bunch of TV shows. He has a hearse that's encrusted with buttons. He had a toilet encrusted with buttons. It's like, it doesn't make it, just trust me, it's something you have to see. So
wow.
We did the Lizard Man Festival. They actually had it at the Button Man Museum the second year. And that was the one I went to. And you're at a fantastic cryptid conference when it's opened by an Elvis impersonator.
No, that's very true. So let me just, okay. So this lizard man comes out, and the first official recorded thing was this teenage boy, right?
Yep, 1988.
And his car, and I'm assuming his car gets confiscated.
Yes.
And then out of the woodwork, other people start showing up going, this is a thing. When was the last time this lizard man's been seen?
Well, the big thing was there was the 2018 there was a sighting right after the festival, but we think that might have just been somebody playing on the festival, right?
Yeah.
And that was also, it looked very similar to that 2015 dubious photo. So I think somebody got the costume back out. I'm not positive on that, but like I said, that also affects things, right? We had a hoax. We've had all these other things. I've had reports, though, which is what I was going to save for after the break, but we'll get into it a little early here. So one of the reports I got was from a man, but not in anywhere near Lee County, South Carolina. But if you follow the waterworks, the streams of water, it's in the same river system that feeds Scape Swamp.
Okay.
So, and now we also know that alligators, lizards, things like that migrate upstream, downstream. That's why we have alligators are now showing up North Carolina and are probably even going a little further north, as we tend to be a little warmer now than we were. So they like to roam and find a new place where they don't have as many competitions for food and stuff like that. So now this story takes place in Georgia, which is one of the reasons why I put it in Eerie, Appalachia, because this was actually in the southern range of the Appalachian Mountains over near Clayton, Georgia, where we did the Bigfoot conference.
Interesting.
Right? About an hour away by car. So not an inordinate distance at all. Through a lot of mountains. So would be an unusual way to go. But the waterworks do flow down to that. So this is just going upstream, basically. Now, this was a man at a house, and he was out actually looking for Bigfoot.
Okay.
And he was out hunting Bigfoot. He had set up traps for deer. He was luring stuff onto his property as a hunter. So it wasn't deer season, wasn't game season, but he was still keeping them on his property so that he would have access easy when hunting season arrived.
Okay.
Like to keep them around his property with deer corn, deer apples, stuff like that.
Which, for the record, watching all of the wildlife shows that I watch every now and then that you've turned me on to, the fish and game shows, is that what they are?
Oh yeah, Northwest Law and Yellowstone Law and all.
Where they say you're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, you're not. So that's why him admitting that was like, oh, wait a minute.
Wow.
Carrie likes to do that because she likes to take pictures of the deer that come by and visit our house.
She's not trying to shoot them, so I think you're allowed to feed things as long as the intention is not to kill them.
Take only photos, right? So anyway, he admitted that he was doing that, but his also reason for doing that was he was hoping that Bigfoot would come and eat his deer. So that way he would lure deer on, have them have a food source.
Oh, wow.
On his property. So this guy, he's like, I was out setting game cameras for the deer, and he noticed a couple of them had stopped working, and he went over and they had literally been just ripped off of a tree. And he said it did not look like anything that he had ever seen before, because it looked like something had clawed it off the tree. And he immediately thought bear, and he couldn't wait to look at his trail cam to see what was on the trail cam. Nothing on the camera, because it's literally looking out one direction, and you see what looks like just like a dark shape, something blurry in front of the camera, which kind of looked like a claw. And then the camera's on the ground. So it came from behind it. So it knew which way the camera was facing.
Clever girl.
So as he's putting that two and two together, but that was later after he was reviewing the footage. But what happened was while he was out there doing that, he's looking out at this woods around him, and there's a stream that goes down his mountain nearby. And he swears that he saw what he thought was an alligator head, but then it stood up, and again, it had a shorter snout, not a long snout. And it turned and looked at him, and he said it had red eyes, and it was muscular.
Oh, wow.
And it looked like human arms almost, with reptilian scales, as it dove into the water almost like a mermaid.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's one of the sightings that I have, and that is from 2020.
Wow. Did he see anything else ever again?
He's not seen it since. But he thinks it literally came up, damaged his cameras, ate some of the food, which was there, which he said was a kill. Looked like a possum or something had been partially eaten and
Oh,
devoured,
wow.
and then it jumped into the water. So that's intelligence. It knows about cameras. It knows how to dodge them.
Well, and that's one of the things okay, we need to take a quick break. We're going to be right back. And I have some theories before you tell me more encounters. So we'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Prepare to be devoured. The Wolves of Wharton is a 6-part complete book series by Eerie Travel's producer, Beau. It has been called dark and visceral, steamy, dramatic, and a fresh take on the werewolf mythos. If you like action, adventure, a large serving of body horror, and some steamy relations, the Wolves of Wharton series is for you. Pick it up wherever books are sold, or at linktree.com/Beau__Lake.
Most know Florida as the land of endless sunny beaches, but the state is home to numerous eerie legends and mysterious creatures. The Everglades is home to the elusive skunk ape. In Key West lies an uncanny doll reputed to have a life of its own. Join Mark Muncy and illustrator Carrie Schultz as they uncover the history behind the state's creepiest stories in unusual locations. The Dark Side of the Sunshine State, presented in Eerie, Florida, from History Press.
Okay, we're back.
Yes.
So I have something, because one of the things since we've started this journey together, so I knew about Mothman and Bigfoot, but I knew about them in a very cursory sense, and because of you and knowing you and Carrie for so long, like I knew about these skunk ape, there's a bunch I knew about. But what I think is really interesting is the assumption I feel like seems to happen a lot, that because these creatures live out in the wild,
right,
that they are not intelligent, that they are not, that smart. And we look at creatures like, say, for instance, dolphins, and they're wildly smart creatures, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's debate on their intelligence being above ours. Now, that's not because we don't, engineer things and stuff like that, but that's also not what these creatures are built to do necessarily. We're very squishy. We need to come up with ways to protect ourselves, because if it was us versus the elements, for the most part, the elements and just normal animals out there win. Like bears win against us the majority of the time. You can hope that a bear gets bored with you and doesn't want to do something, but if you do any sort of Googling on YouTube for bear attacks, this is not a pleasant experience. The same is true with gator attacks. Like, people die from gator attacks, shark attacks, like fairly regularly. One of the things I think in Florida that a lot of people don't acknowledge as much is the amount of gator attacks against humans has increased. And with people, especially people who are homeless or camping or doing stuff in swampy areas, disappear because gators will roll and they'll save and munch on you for quite some time.
Yeah. Now, there's some other odd lizard man-like creatures, right? New Jersey has one called the Gator Man. Ooh. And he was seen in the 70s near the Lafayette area. And he was described by a local journalist who covered the story as basically a giant lizard man. And I'm like, wait a minute, this sounds really familiar. But he was stating that he thought it might have been a Native American legend that he had heard of a man-sized fish that could never be caught.
Oh.
And that's what he tied it in. Then there was also some people who wore crocodile armor in Australia, New Zealand area, and he thought maybe one of them had come to New Jersey wearing their armor. So again, this report was a scaled man-like creature that comes from the red algae-infested waters and apparently forages amongst the moss-covered uplands. The fact that a simple, city official actually acknowledges it is crazy. And again, no physical evidence, nothing else. Just summer of 1973, somebody sees a humanoid alligator in New Jersey. And then there's one in Florida, of course, right?
Yeah, of course.
So now this is called Gator Man, and he's been spotted numerous times. And now I didn't put him in any of my books because I didn't have more than one witness at any single time, right? I have to have multiple reports before I throw them in the books, right? So I need a little more than this. All right, so let me just take on a little journey here. So
I love it. Are we going in the Wayback Machine again?
This one's like an attraction that's been around for a long time, right?
Okay.
But we are going a little distance away, and that's Long Beach,
California.
Right? Long Beach, California.
Oh, see, I grew up in California, so I've been to Long Beach.
They have an attraction called Jake the Alligator Man, and it's a bizarre-looking creature with the body of an alligator and the head of a man.
What?
So,
what?
Yeah. It's basically a taxidermy creation, right? But it's supposedly Jake the Alligator Man was found in the Florida swamps by a group of hunters, and then it was brought here to be on display.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to put a link in the notes because I'm looking at this.
Jake the Alligator Man.
Like a mermaid, but with an alligator back.
Right, exactly.
Okay, that's weird.
What's weird is this, the placement of his eyes there, right? It definitely looks like he was pieced together from a bunch of different animals. He's definitely a composite of some sort. But anyway, he's definitely fun, and you gotta love Florida swamp culture, right? So, and then the New Jersey Gator Man again, 1977. That was when the naturalist Alfred Hulls, who was a New York City conservationist, decided to document it and put it in paper, saying that that there have been sightings all the way back to the 1800s, attacking livestock, attacking residents. There are no reports anywhere of this, but this naturalist put it in his book.
He put what?
He put the New Jersey Gator Man in his book.
What?
So all these things are so weird, right? Is it real? Is it not real? Why? That's a weird taxidermy thing. But there are stories of the gator, Jake the Gator Man down in Florida. There are stories of, and now he's in California. The New Jersey guy, 77, 78, he's back. He's alive. What? Now we're protecting him in a book. We're documenting him for a conservation book. It's all over the place, right? This is just the weirdest story. I don't know how to really document this one.
Yeah, no, So what are your thoughts after having seen some of this stuff, though? Because
okay, I think summer of 88 in Bishopville, South Carolina, something was happening. Again, preternatural. I'm using that as the term. There were multiple cars that were damaged. If somebody had a Jaws of Life machine that could make the claw marks, why make it 3 fingers, and why do that over and over and over to cars? And the fact that all the people reporting it had nothing to do with each other, except they were all in this same town at the same time. Some of them were visitors, some of them were locals, and they could never be connected. That's not a hoax.
No, that's true. Do you think it could be somebody dressed up like this thing? Do you think somebody could have created a costume, or do we think so? I go back to the story that the Boone Devil, our favorite story of slight controversy from somebody yelling at us about talking about it. So Boone Devil just talked about it again. But they talk about how they believe that this was something that the Native Americans summoned. right? Yeah. Do a particular function, right?
Right.
And then sort of left it out because they didn't put it away like they probably should have. Do we think that this creature, whatever this creature is, could be something similar? Where, because when it's like Mothman, it's interesting because all of these stories that you've told, and I'm kind of not even letting you talk, but I'm going on a rant here. All of the stories that you've told me about different creatures, like even Spearfinger, who's one of our favorites and is going to be in our new book soon to be up for pre-order. But Spearfinger has been seen by multiple people around multiple areas, but she seems to be a singular entity, and we appear to have some of the lore behind this particular entity and what created her. Boondevil, similarly, it's not out of the question from those family things that we got that this is something that was summoned, like a Topla or whatever we want to call it, to do this action. It just, they didn't put it away. I've had a rant about putting these things away. Could this lizard man, and I'm using quotation marks, be something that maybe was summoned or awoken from having previously been summoned, and then it's just out and about because it's on the loose? What are your thoughts with that?
I think we've had history, right? We've had Sobek, the Egyptian god who looks like a crocodile man. There is history of this. There are other animal-headed creatures that we've documented through eternity, right? This is since we've be able to write things down and stuff like that. The thing about Scape War is the fact that the police were so heavily involved in it, and they made castings of footprints. This is not something that, outside of Bigfoot hunters do. But the police did this, and they've got some 3-toed footprints that are giant and make no sense. If this is just a hoax, you're really pushing it with the cops here. Now, that one guy, that airman who did file the police report, they got him to confess within hours of his hoax.
Yeah.
But I think that was mostly because his didn't fit the rest of the stories.
Yeah.
It was in a different area. And I think the cops realized, all right, this ain't what we're chasing. This is something else. I don't know. We've got those weird photos. Everybody's like, definitive proof. And they're not blurry, but they look silly. But that could be what these things look like, right? This thing could look silly. It could look like a jacked up Arnold Schwarzenegger lizard. I remember when I first showed those photos to a friend of mine I used to work with at a day job, and he went, man, I know I wouldn't want to mess with that. And this guy's huge.
Well, and that's the interesting thing, is to find prints, to find that stuff. I just wonder again, but do you think it could have been a singularly summoned creature, right?
I honestly don't know. I think this is something that we've got to talk about. One last part about our wonderful favorite TV show, Mountain Monsters.
Yes.
Right? We love watching Mountain Monsters. You take it for what it is. Those guys, they don't get enough credit because, yes, it's entertaining as hell. The fact that it had 7 seasons is incredible to me. They did talk to actual witnesses, and they did an episode where they were going to capture the lizard man. And Trapper builds this crazy contraption of a steel tube, and they put a live chicken at the end. Or no, it was like a whole chicken at the end of it. Try to lure him in and catch him like an alligator trap. And it's an entertaining hour of television, right? Mm-hmm. So definitely give it a watch. We'll put the link in the notes. It's goofy fun. Just remember that. Now, that's it. Those guys are awesome. They do a lot of charity work. They do a lot of incredible. They make appearances to this day. A few of them are no longer with us, but it's still amazing that they're still doing what they do. Now, when I talk to them, I particularly asked them about the man they talked to, about Lizard Man, because he mentioned he was up in Kentucky where he had his encounter with the Lizard Man.
Right.
And they went to his house and talked to him, and then they used his river as their base of operations. That's the same river system that goes all the way down to Scape War.
Oh.
Now, when I asked them, about it. They're like, well, we just go to the places, we do what we do. They don't talk to the people. That happens a lot with these TV shows, is that the producers will go out and find experts and witnesses and stuff like that. We've all been parts of the shows. I had one of the show I couldn't do was a popular TV show, and they needed me to come on as a folklore historian. I couldn't do it. I gave them the name of a friend. That friend comes on. That friend's a paranormal investigator. They put her on the show as a historian. She read my materials, and she didn't even get to talk about the paranormal side of it because that's what they needed her for, right? They already have their paranormal experts. So that's what happens when you consult for these shows and stuff like that. Now, Mountain Monsters, again, entertainment show, entertainment purposes only. So I love that they don't try to hide that. But the fact that they talked to this witness. So I got information from them to talk to this witness. And I reached out to him. He wouldn't talk about it anymore because he felt like he was made fun of on the show. And I think, again, that's become the theme of this episode unintentionally. That's crazy that we're doing this.
It's so weird because me and you didn't talk about that at all before we started, but we talked about what happened to our traveler, but it's interesting. So he doesn't want to talk about his encounter.
He doesn't want to talk about it anymore. So I was able to, though, check that area out and ask anybody else if they had experiences, and a lot of them wouldn't talk about it because what happened with the mountain monsters. But I did get a couple more people, and they reached out to me and said, hey, it's not what you think. And I'm like, okay, what is it? And they said it was more like the Hopkinsville creatures, where they were three-toed and they were smaller and leaner, and they come out of the caves in that area, and they look like lizard people. They look like big-eyed lizard people.
Oh, wow.
When I thought about that, I went back to Kelly Hopkinsville, which we've always assumed, aliens, right? Because the alien crash, all that. But when you start listening into their descriptions, they didn't have three toes. They didn't have anything like that. But they did have, they were green or gray, depending on the description. It's like, wait a minute. Okay, so let's go back. And we start blurring these things together, and you start going, the cave system has a lot of unusual stuff that lives in it. And we talk about salamanders. We talk about underground moon-eyed people. We talked about the crosswick serpent. We've talked about the hodag even, right? Are these things with weird feet and reptile scales, and they live near water, and they live in caves. Wait a minute.
Wow.
It's all connected. What?
No, it's kind of amazing when you think about that, because you also sometimes wonder and go, juvenile, are we just seeing certain versions of it? And the thing is that places and environments can mutate creatures as well. So to assume that this whatever creature it is going to look the same everywhere, it doesn't. And even similar species that live in different areas of the world have different adaptations that they've done, even if they're the same creature. We kind of talked about this with Justin. We just brought this up, Justin, with Cryptids of the Corn. Funny, we're circling back to that as well. But he talked about the hyena situation, right? Yeah. And that there are hyenas being seen in the United States. Well, they're going to operate very differently than hyenas that are in the desert of Africa, for instance, because it's a different climate. It's a different food source. It's things like that. But that doesn't mean that they're not,
The salamanders, different areas have different types of giant salamanders, and different areas have different types of things. I think this is all stuff that is, it's just stuff we don't know yet. This is this is an animal that I do think might be out there. This is the one that I'm like, okay, it's the goofiest one, but I also think this one also might have some truth to it.
Wow.
If it is something natural, I think this might be the one. I mean, this also fits in with the lake monsters. This fits in with some of that stuff because it would be similarly seen like that. All that said, I don't know. That's all I can say. This is the people I've talked to saw weird things that don't make sense. They saw a lizard-like creature that doesn't make sense. The Loveland Frogman was an iguana, then it was a frogman, then it was, it's depends on who you talk to at the right time. I think Lizard Man's the same thing. We have cars, we have footprints, we have police evidence of photographs. No pictures of the monster, unless you count that 2015 picture. And it's as clear. Everybody's like, oh, we need a clear picture. Well, guess what? This is a clear picture. It just happens to be in a goofy pose. My goodness, I don't know what to say, except that we have travels for this. Now, we just missed Lizard Man Stomp, which is what the Lizard Man Festival has become, which has become much more like the other festivals, where before it was more like a Comic-Con / paranormal convention. Now it is much more of a community fair type event. But when you go to Bishopville, you might get lucky and see Button Man's museum. And if you get lucky, you might be able to catch his button-covered hearse. But you can also go to the Cotton Museum and see the world's largest boll weevil.
What?
Yes.
I don't even want to know.
We're all in the same town, right? So how can you not go to Bishopville?
No, I think it sounds like that's a day you could spend.
Yeah.
Or you could spend a couple and go on a looky-loo for this creature.
Yeah. Now there's a couple places to eat in town. They do have the Lizard Man Burger that you can eat.
Where's that?
Oh, it's in Lee County. It's in Bishopville. And I'm gonna have to find the name.
I want to just make sure that Lizard Man thing is not alligator, because I've had alligator and it's not bad, but I prefer beef.
Yeah. Now, I will say that we do have one more caveat from our wonderful friend that I mentioned before, Dr. Laycock. He mentioned this great thing. He said, make sure you come to Bishopville and do try to find the Lizard Man. Just make sure you buy car insurance, because cars tend to get ripped off. And I'm like,
love that.
Yep. So that's our travel tip. When you go to Lee County, make sure you buy car insurance.
I love that. Well, this has been an exciting journey. I feel like I've learned a lot. I'm excited to hear when people do a little more research and what comes of this particular one, and its link to some of these other stories that we've heard. But with that, Mark, don't forget to come out and see us at Smoky Mountain Bigfoot, July 27th.
27th in Gallenberg.
And then Squonkapalooza, which is up in Pennsylvania, will be up there August 10th and 11th. And we don't travel that far north most of the time. So travelers, if you're out there, take this opportunity. Plus, I mean, it's a crying pig. We are going to have some fun at that particular festival.
Yeah. So I'm excited for both of these. I think the Bigfoot Festival is a hoot. We were there last year. We didn't have our books there last year, so I'm excited this year we'll actually have Eerie, Appalachia there. So get that signed. And Erika and I are wrapping up our next book very, very soon, and it will definitely tie into that area. It's pretty crazy.
Mark, wrap us up, my friend.
All right. With that said, gang, let's thank you again so much for joining us on these strange journeys and traveling with us to these unusual places. We hope when you go to Bishopville, tell them Eerie Travel sent you. For those patrons on Patreon, thank you so much for keeping the show on the road. And please visit our sponsors. Also, do your best. Give us a like, give us a thumbs up. And, hey, if somebody does go out there and report something weird and something unusual, and your first instinct is to go, hey, that's silly, take a step back and go, you know what? That's their truth. Let's let them live it. With that said, gang, we'll see you on the other side.